When the HOA stole my lakefront to build 120 luxury cabins, they thought I'd roll over. What they didn't know was that I owned the one thing that could erase every single dollar they'd invested, with one turn of a wheel. The whole mess started a little over a year ago, right after the new HOA elections. I'd been living in this lakeside community for 15 years. My wife and I had moved here after retiring from the city, looking for some peace, some space, and a view that never got old. The lake wasn't just a body of water to me. It was part of my daily life. I fished there in the mornings, kayaked in the afternoons, and sat with a glass of sweet tea on the dock at night, watching the sun melt into the horizon. Then came the new president, Linda Graves. She was a real estate developer before moving in. Sharp suit, sharper smile, and a way of talking that made you think she was doing you a favor even when she was robbing you blind. She didn't run for HOA president because she cared about the community. No, she saw opportunity. At her very first meeting, she rolled out a big glossy presentation, full-color renderings, market projections, and words like revitalization, reinvestment, and sustainable tourism. She painted a picture of a transformed lakeside, 120 luxury rental cabins, a spa, a fancy boat marina, restaurants. She promised jobs for locals and a stronger tax base. People ate it up. But as she flipped through the slides, my stomach dropped. One of the maps she put up, a development zone marked in green, stretched right over my property. I raised my hand. "Linda," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "why is my lot included in that map?" She smiled, that tight politician's smile. "Oh, well, technically, your property is part of the HOA's Lakeside Development Zone. It was reclassified years ago. You'll be compensated, of course." "Compensated?" I said. "This is my home. I'm not selling." She leaned into the microphone. "Then we'll have to work through the proper channels." I should have seen it coming after that. Within a week, I got a letter from the HOA's attorney, full of legal jargon about eminent domain within association jurisdiction and community redevelopment authority. I called my lawyer, and he told me straight, fighting this would be expensive, and they might have enough legal precedent to win. I decided to hold my ground anyway. But the HOA didn't wait for a judge. 2 weeks later, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery. Bulldozers. I ran outside to find crews tearing down my dock. They'd put up a temporary fence along the water line with big "No Trespassing HOA Property" signs. I confronted the foreman. "You're on my property." He didn't even look up from his clipboard. "Sir, this is HOA land now. You'll have to take it up with them." I marched to the HOA office, slammed my fists on Linda's desk. "You're trespassing. You have no right." She looked at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "We're building something bigger than you, Mark. You can either be a part of it or you can be in the way. And if you're in the way, well, the law will decide." I left before I said something I couldn't take back. My lawyer confirmed it. The court process could drag on for years. Meanwhile, the HOA would keep building. For months, I watched from my porch as the cabins took shape. They were big, flashy things with wraparound porches, huge windows facing the lake, and little fire pits in the backyards. They built a new pier, a boardwalk, and even started landscaping. Money was pouring in. I saw contractors working 7 days a week, racing to meet some opening date they kept bragging about in their newsletters. And the whole time, Linda would wave at me whenever she drove past. That smug wave, like she'd already won. But what Linda didn't know, what nobody in that shiny new HOA office seemed to remember, was that 8 years ago, the dam at the far end of the lake was falling apart. The HOA at the time didn't want to pay for repairs. Too expensive, they said. So I stepped in. I paid for it myself. The deal was simple. In exchange for covering the full repair cost, the dam and its water rights would be deeded to me personally. I signed the paperwork, filed it at the county clerk's office, and then forgot about it. Until now. You see that lake they were selling exclusive waterfront views for? That lake only existed because I kept the dam closed. Without it, the water would drain downstream in a matter of hours. And without the lake, their so-called luxury cabins were just overpriced sheds in the mud. I kept my mouth shut. I let them finish their pretty little project. The week before their big grand opening, when every cabin was booked solid and investors were coming into town, I got up before dawn and drove out to the dam. The air was cold and the metal of the wheel was slick with dew. I put my hands on it and started to turn. The old gears groaned. Then there was a deep rushing roar as the gates opened and the water surged out. By mid-morning, the lake was already shrinking. By noon, the boats were sitting in muck, the docks hanging over cracked earth. Guests were showing up, taking one look at the lakefront and demanding refunds. I sat on my porch and sipped my coffee, watching the chaos. That evening, I got a call from the HOA. They wanted an emergency meeting. When I walked into the room, Linda was red in the face. "You drained the lake. That's criminal damage." I slid a folder across the table. Inside was the deed to the dam and the water rights. My name on every page, signed, notarized, filed. Her face went pale. This can't be legal." "It's completely legal," I said. "You should have done your homework before you built a lakeside resort without making sure you owned the lake." There wasn't much else to say. Within weeks, the project collapsed. The investors pulled out. The bank froze their loans. The cabins sat empty, gathering dust. And the HOA, desperate to make the bleeding stop, returned my property without a fight. Once the paperwork was signed, I went back to the dam, closed the gates, and let the lake fill back up. Then I rebuilt my dock exactly where it had always been. Now every morning I sit there with my coffee, looking out over the water, knowing that as long as I own that dam, nobody will ever take this view from me again. They thought they owned my view. Turns out, I owned their future.